So welcome everyone. It's so good to see you, if only virtually, although we're not meeting together on campus tonight as we typically do. It is still wonderful to see so many of you here in our spacious Zoom room. It's hard to believe that we have entered our second decade in this, the 11th annual Morton Marcus Poetry Reading. In a year of deadly pandemic, social upheaval, and here in Santa Cruz, devastating fires, poetry has been a retreat for many of us, even a life-saving balm. So thank you for all coming together to join with us. I want to mention that the chat has been disabled this evening, but you are welcome to enter your questions for Morgan at any time during the reading or evening via the Q&A, and we'll answer as many of them as we can after the reading. My name is Gary Young, and it is my very great pleasure to welcome you tonight. As a member of the creative writing faculty here at UC Santa Cruz, I am thrilled that tonight's reading is part of our ongoing Living Writers series, and that even in these perilous times, we can still gather together to celebrate the power of poetry and of community. This event would not be possible without the efforts of many individuals and the generous support of several institutions. And I'd like to thank our sponsors, beginning with the Au Family Properties. From UC Santa Cruz, many thanks to the Humanities Institute, Special Collections and Archives, the Creative Writing Program, and the Living Writers Series, the Porter Hitchcock Poetry Fund, and Cowell College. Thanks as well to Poetry Santa Cruz, Cabrillo College English Department, Bookshop Santa Cruz, and Santa Cruz Writes. I would also like to salute my good friends on the Morton Marcus Poetry Reading Organizing Committee. For 11 years, the Morton Marcus Poetry Reading has honored our dear friend, Morton Marcus. Mort was one of our country's premier poets, in addition to being a novelist, memoirist, film, and literary critic. Mort taught at Cabrillo College for 30 years and fostered an uncountable number of poets and writers who were inspired and mentored by him. In the early 70s, Mort established a poetry reading series, which was the inspiration and the driver for the burgeoning poetry scene that has continued to flourish here. Morton was our community's original poetry champion, the indisputable father of the poetry scene here in Santa Cruz, and I think he would be pleased by the way our community has responded to our current crises. In addition to his writing, his teaching, and his community organizing, Mort hosted the Poetry Show on our local community radio station, as well as a popular television program. Mort received a Gail Rich Award and was honored as the Santa Cruz County Artist of the Year. Morton's archive is held in the Special Collections Library at UCSC. And as soon as we move past this pandemic, I encourage you to take advantage of the riches there, including recordings of the Morton Marcus Poetry Readings. A passionate advocate for poetry, a gourmand, a generous and steadfast friend, a fabulous raconteur, and an indefatigable spirit, Morton left an enormous mark on our literary landscape and on our local community, and it's one that continues to resonate. Every year, I have the pleasure of reading a few of Morton's poems to get things rolling, and reading through Morton's books is one of my great pleasures. In lieu of the fires that ravaged the Santa Cruz Mountains this summer, I'm going to begin and end with a poem from Morton's The Santa Cruz Mountain Poems. The first, Waking at Night, and the other, The Year Turns Away From Me. I've lived in the Santa Cruz Mountains in Bonnie Doon for 40 years, and though our house just barely survived the conflagration, many friends and neighbors lost their homes, and I'd like to dedicate these poems to them. I'll also read a favorite poem of mine from Pursuing the Dream Bone, Under the Earth. Waking at Night. Waking at night, silver wet as a snake shook from his old skin, I know my quilt is the meadow, and that turning, I'll drag the whole field with me into sleep. I lie still, feeling the cold trace the edges of my teeth. Moonlight frosting the near sides of weeds, and I'm standing in a high place under the oak tree, moonlight in the field below. Small bones snap as though something were breaking in a far place inside me. Shocks, crackings, words so small boned they collapse into dust before I can hear them. Limps, smashed leaves, trottings, scurryings through tunnels of briar, and the snout nudgings underground, claw whisks, splashes of dirt. Even my boots bump against stones in a running I hadn't known I'd begun. The wind whiskers sleep to my face, the howling in my ears as the whole field tips, rises before me with beetle sparklings, flashes of eye, moon shell, lightning branches, milky leaves, and rears higher than trees, than moonlight, than stars, and will collapse into my map of bones, only to pour through me as if I were a doorway between one room and another. And this from Pursuing the Dream Bone, Under the Earth. Under the earth, the gems, smeared with mud, scraped by rocks and stones, clutched by the dense atmosphere, give off no light. Beetles and earwigs crawl along slim highways of gold and take no notice. Ants twirl antennae on clumps of scuffed diamonds. From above, the roots, like fingers of the very old, nudge aside pebbles and shells, reach here and there as though searching for something lost in a bureau drawer. Their movement is tentative, as if their owners were unsure of what they sought and suspected it might have been something they never had, but only hoped for. And one final poem from the Santa Cruz Mountain Poems. The year turns away from me. The year turns away from me. I'm here on the other side of the hill, where winds are flames, blue wings in the meadow. Tall steeples of ashes diminish at the meadow's edge. Far down the hillside, a deep chorus of boulders is singing the pebbles awake. Morton Marcus. Let me put this up so you can see it. The Santa Cruz Mountain Poems is still available, and it's a brilliant book and a beautiful one. For the last 9 years, a national poetry competition has been held to honor Morton, and it's a great pleasure to welcome my dear friend Dory Post, who will introduce this year's winning poet. Before I do, I'd like to give a special shout out to Dory, who not only has written and published an astonishing number of books, of poetry, plays, and fiction, while struggling with his health the past couple of years. He also met the pandemic head on and started a weekly reading series, Zoom Forward, which has featured a distinguished list of local and nationally known writers, and has really been a buoy for those of us who have been suffering under quarantine. Dory is also a letterpress printer, a book artist, and the power behind many literary and educational endeavors in Santa Cruz, including Santa Cruz Writes and Frenzy. Dory is a longtime advocate for the arts in our community, and we are lucky to count him as our own. Please welcome Dory Post.
Thank you so much, Gary. Can you hear me? I'll assume yes. Somebody will give me a thumbs up.
We can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the kind words, and thanks for choosing some of my favorite of Mort's poems. I'd like to thank all those poets who submitted their work for this year's 9th annual Morton Marcus Poetry Contest. And a special thanks to Dennis Maloney of White Pines Press, who was this year's judge. Before I announce Dennis's selection for the winning poet and poem, let me once again thank George Au Jr. and the Au Family Properties for sponsoring the $1,000 Poetry Prize. Because of COVID, for the first time this year, I won't be able to hand the winner her check, but she should be receiving it in the mail soon. It gives me great pleasure to announce Leona Sevick as the 2020 Morton Marcus Poetry Prize winner for her poem, The Heifer. Here's a little bit about Leona. Leona Sevick is the 2017 Press 53 Poetry Award winner for her first full-length book of poems, Lion Brothers, and the first place winner of the Split This Rock Poetry Contest, judged by Naomi Shiab-Nye. Her recent work appears in Crab Orchard Review, the Arkansas International, the Southeast Review, the Cortland Review, Four-Way Review, the American Journal of Poetry, Reed Divider, the Rumpus, Seneca Review, the Birmingham Poetry Review. She has work forthcoming in Orion, Spillway, and Blackbird. She's provost and professor of English at Bridgewater College in Virginia, where she teaches Asian American literature. She was named a 2019 Walter E. Dakin Fellow for the Sewanee Writers Conference, and she serves on the advisory board of the Furious Flower Black Poetry Center. Welcome, Leona Levick, with her award-winning poem, The Heifer.
Thank you, Jory. And thank you, friend Z. I'd also like to thank the Humanities Institute at UC Santa Cruz for this invitation to read. And of course, I'd like to thank Dennis Maloney for choosing my poem. The Heifer. Sometimes I think about the cows and how he really loved them. Every post hole dug by hand, the long, smooth boards nailed up perfectly. How he spent hours painting the fence black with creosote and oil, his rough hands and face flecked and burning. Winter mornings, he mended gates, poured corn feed into troughs, pitched hay onto frozen grass while watching froth form along their steaming, swollen lips. I thought she was dead the morning he went looking for the heifer. Running back to our house, shouting for blankets, for a bucket, he called Dr. Matthews and then grabbed the handsaw. At some distance, I followed him, afraid of what I'd find when I reached them. Kneeling by her head, her gray tongue lolling and still, my father sawed quickly through the low fencing that trapped her head when she was nibbling grass under the boards. She must have pulled and struggled for hours, her eyes jumping in their sockets, big as golf balls. He talked softly, stroked the coarse red fur on her neck, and waited for the vet. My father nursed her through the night, and at daybreak, the rifle shot woke me. By the time I returned from school, her body was gone. He never spoke of her again. The next week, he had the others hauled away, let the fence tilt and fall into disrepair. I've learned that gentleness confounds a brutal man, and that suffering can spoil the meat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leona, and congratulations on a wonderful poem. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce tonight's featured reader, Morgan Parker. I was introduced to Morgan by my son, Jake, when they were both teenagers, after the two budding poets met at CISA, the California State Summer School for the Arts program for high school students. Jake made no bones about it. Morgan Parker was the real deal. She was someone to watch. And so I watched. Her career has been nothing less than meteoric. Morgan Parker is a poet, essayist, and novelist. She's a triple threat. She received her MFA in poetry from NYU, and her poetry and essays have been published and anthologized in numerous publications, including the Paris Review, the Breakbeat Poets of New American Poetry in the Age of Hip Hop, Best American Poetry 2016, the New York Times, and The Nation. She's the author of the young adult novel, Who Put This Song On? And the poetry collections, Other People's Comfort Keep Me Up at Night, which won the Gatewood Prize and was a finalist for the Poetry Society of America's Norma Farber First Book Award. And There Are More Beautiful Things Than Beyonce, also Magical Negro, which won the National Book Critics Circle Award and the California Book Award. She is a Cave Canem Graduate Fellow, winner of a Pushcart Prize, and a recipient of a National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellowship. Her debut book of nonfiction is forthcoming from One World. An astute, unwavering truth teller with a keen intelligence and a wicked sense of humor, Morgan has become essential reading. Her poems are by turns smart, sexy, tender, angry, and frequently all of these things at once. Morgan's poems question and challenge our beliefs, our language, and our identities. Blunt and body, she confronts racism, sexism, and white propaganda, and dismantles our comforting and all too often self-serving attitudes about them all. She pulls away the curtain of our illusions. Morgan's poems challenge history, both personal and collective, and grapple with blackness and the possibilities of rescuing the Black body, and more specifically, the Black woman's body from a violent history, imagining and reimagining and re-embodying history on its own terms. In the poem, Who Were Frederick Douglass's Cousins and Other Quotidian Black History Facts That I Wish I Learned in School, she writes, I have a body. It sits in a desk. Every day is bitten with new guilt. When my teacher talks about slaves, I become a slave. I know too much. In the kaleidoscopic Magic Negro 607, Gladys Knight on the 200th episode of The Jefferson, the narrator admits, when I'm rich, I'll still be Black, and asks, how will I know that I've made it? Later in the poem, the narrator endures the transmutation. Everyone I know is a Black man, so I'm a Black man too. In the very next poem, the speaker rebels against such loss of agency and repeats this line 5 times. The body is a person. The body is a person. There is an urgency to all of Morgan Parker's poems, reinforced and amplified by the dazzling jumps, the unexpected connections, and the protean images that seem impossible to achieve until she makes them when they suddenly seem inevitable. Her poems are formally prodigious, but whether writing in couplets, accentuals, prose poems, or arranging free verse, Parker's poems always sing. Uncompromising and relentless, they compel us to open our eyes, our hearts, and our minds. Please welcome Morgan Parker.
Hi, thank you so much, Gary. That was such a beautiful introduction, and I'm so just honored to be here and bummed that I'm not there in person to see you all. Yeah, you know, my mom loves telling the story of me going to CISA and crying and being like, I hate poetry. This is not for me. I didn't want to be in this class. You know, and that as an origin story is funny, but as I was talking to some of Gary's students earlier about poetry can feel inaccessible and scary and alienating often, and feel like something that you have to figure out and wrestle with and be smart enough to access. So yeah, I just want to invite anyone listening who feels that way to just forget it, because that's turns out that's not all that poetry can be. And again, thank you for your amazing introduction, Gary, and for just seeing a lot of the things that I'm trying to do and also seeing the reasons why. I sent the poems to, I wanted to be able to give the closed captioning, and I'm so sorry that I sent them so late. So I'm gonna read them roughly in the order that I gave them to you to try to make it easier. Thanks everyone for being here. I wish I could say that you're all very beautiful, but I cannot see you. But you're beautiful. You're here on a Thursday night listening to poems, so I appreciate you. Thanks to everyone at UC Santa Cruz, as well as Leona, and congrats on your winning poem, as well as your first book. And thanks also for the work you do with Furious Flower. They're a really important organization. And congrats also on the Split This Rock thing, because they're fantastic also, to anyone who isn't familiar with those organizations. Okay, yeah, I'll just start. This is an early poem in There Are More Beautiful Things Than Beyonce. And if you have not seen the image, or no, sorry, Magical Negro. I'm getting my own books confused. But if you're not familiar with this image, I encourage you to look it up, because it's just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. So Magical Negro number 217. Diana Ross finishing a rib in Alabama, 1990s. Since I thought I'd be dead by now, everything I do is fucking perfect. Walking wreck, reckless, and men, I suck their bones until they're perfect. I don't sleep with accolades. I don't get touched in the night. All men do is cry and ask me to be their mama. I can't get a decent fuck to save my, when I think about their feelings, I don't care. It's cool. It's cool. Come to mama. There is so much death here. She is casual and almost fragrant, like the word kill doesn't sound as bad as it is. All my friends are sisters and husbands. I'm afraid to be uncharted. I want an empire in my teeth, but I can't be bothered to wear anything but silk. I have grown up less mysterious than my myth. All men do is think I'm looking at them. When I think about them tasting me, don't Google my tits when you can just, unfortunately, I have a body and I'm the only one in charge of it. You know what? I eat the bones too. I'm in the world. I'm in the world. Nobody cares where I came from. The high priestess of soul's Sunday morning visit to the wall of respect. The Impressionism wing strikes me as too dainty for my mood, except for one oil painting by Gustave Caillebotte, Calf's Head and Ox Tongue, which is described in the wall text as visually unpleasant. A bust of an African woman bums me out. This year, I cried at everyone's kitchen table. I spit on the street and was late on purpose and stepped in glass and my dog died. And I saw minuses over and over. I'll figure it out. I let a man walk away and then another one. It has taken me exactly this long to realize I could have done something else. I'm being repetitive now, but Do you ever hate yourself? This poem Gary mentioned in his introduction, and with apologies to kind of academic heady types such as myself who speak of the Black body. That's something we hear a lot, and even I might extend it to the Black life. I think we get kind of in dangerous territory when we start talking about bodies and lives as these kind of theoretical ideas. And one day I was just kind of thinking about that, the Black body as this magical Negro that is undefined. Magical Negro number 84, the Black body. Give it a new verb. Stop writing poetry. Go outside. Make blood. The body is a person. 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 One of the things I was excited to talk to the students about was writing about other people. And one of the things I said was just like, oh, well, just do it. And often people kind of don't even notice. And this is a good example of, you know, something that I thought the person would pick up on immediately and have beef with me, but they were just like, that's a good poem. So, you know, there's a lesson. When a man I love jerks off in my bed next to me and falls asleep, I think of my father, vodka laughing. Ah, shit. When daddy said go pick out a switch from the lemon tree, we knew that switch better be good. My father was a drunk altar boy. My father was a Southern boy. Now my father is a good man. When you grow up in the South, you know the difference between a good switch and a bad one. Pick what hurts best. The difference between drinking to disappear and drinking to remember. Be polite, be gentle, be a vessel, be ashamed. As a child, I begged to be whooped. I pinched myself with my nails when I was young. I tried to pull out my eyelashes. I said, punish me. I said, for I have sinned, I am disgusting. Here is the order in which we studied the Bible in second grade. 1, Genesis, or God is a man and he owns you. You were bad. Put on some goddamn clothes. 2, Exodus, or you would still be a slave if it were not for men. Also, magic, or never question a man's truth. 3, Job, or suffer because it is holy. During the classes on Revelation, I think I drifted to sleep. I think I dreamed trumpets when I touched my hot parts, then touched the cold steel of my desk. I knew what it meant to be wrong and woman. When I walk into the world and know I am a Black girl, I understand I am a costume. I know the rules. I like the pain because it makes me. I deserve the pain. I deserve you looking at me, moaning, looking away. Son of a bitch. My rent is due. No one kissed my tits and read the Bible. Good and evil. Pleasure and empty curtain grid of dawn light. I call this honor. I call this birthright. I also think one of the students mentioned this following poem, which started when I saw an episode of Scandal. It's like an old episode. I'm very much not caught up. Of the president's wife, which is this white lady, was like grieving, and she's like eating a bunch of fried chicken, and she holds up this piece of fried chicken, and it like lines up exactly with the Washington Monument. And that for me and watching TV was a moment of like, oh, that is Just the piece of chicken next to this monument is in and of itself a poem. And then this came out. Ode to Fried Chicken's guest appearance on Scandal. Everyone likes it. That's not the point. In America, the ocean isn't rising. I allow the chicken to be my stand-in. For argument's sake, I encompass all chicken, all guns. The thing about guns is everyone is dying. That's not the point. On Scandal, the white president says gun violence. He is fucking a Black woman secretly. That's when the chicken enters. I take the liberty of assessing the chicken as such. The wedge between someone's forefathers, crispy, hot threat to sanctity, a monument. Olivia's in the white coat again, her wide collar of morality standing for the gall of us. Everybody wants a taste. Everybody's dying. Everybody wants a taste. The chicken is sacred, Black pussy. The chicken invades your homes. The chicken circles the truth. The chicken can fly. The chicken is how we riot. The salt, the terror. They should have never brought us here. Okay, this is potentially the last time I will give a craft lesson. It's always bad to have me visit classes because then I'm in my reading see, here's a teachable moment. But another way to write about people and not get sued is to give everybody the same name. This poem is called Matt. For all intents and purposes, and because the rule applies more often than it doesn't, every white man or boy who has entered and fallen away from my particular moderate life has been called Matt, not Dan, rarely Ben, never Matthew. Matt smokes unfiltered Pall Malls because Kurt Vonnegut did. We talk on MySpace because he goes to a different high school. Matt's in love with someone else, but I can tell he's still interested in me. Matt and his girlfriend aren't really together. Matt doesn't have a condom, so we can't. Matt also doesn't have a condom, so we can't. Matt loves Modest Mouse. Matt loves Kanye. He loves whiskey. He brings a flask to the park. He tells me I'm beautiful. He likes me. He follows me into the bathroom where I once found a bag of Coke. I tip sideways onto the tile, trying to steady myself on top of him while his legs are spread on the toilet lid. I say, "What about you and Anna?" He says, "Hold your ankles." I made Matt a really good mix CD. Matt's writing a novel. Matt's also writing a novel. Matt says I'm a really good kisser. My friends say I'm too good for Matt. Matt loves his mom. Matt has a big family. He listens to sad songs. Oh, sorry, I messed up. And so the closed captioning is messed up. I can't just do my thing and move over it. So I'm going to go back just for that. He says, "Hold your ankles." I made Matt a really good mix CD. Matt's writing a novel. Matt's also writing a novel. Matt says I'm a really good kisser. My friends say I'm too good for Matt. Matt loves his mom. Matt's moving to Berlin. Matt's moving to California. Matt's quitting smoking again. Matt rolls his own cigarettes. Matt has depression. He listens to sad songs. Matt wants a big family. He seems like he would be a good dad. His family is so white. His favorite novelists are white. His ex-girlfriends are white. He said he would call me. His ex-girlfriends are really skinny. He has this thing where he seems like he doesn't care about anything. Matt's in love with someone else. He thought I was way older than him. He got a new tattoo. He has bad dreams. I miss him. He loves foreign movies. He's stoned all the time. He pulls me into another room. He has a beard, and he also has a beard. He kisses me in the other room. He loves my dog. He flirts with me all the time, I think just for fun. Oh, Matt. He knows he's a white man, but doesn't think of himself as a white man. He doesn't know what to do with his life. He floats, he is young, he can afford to be cool. He wears a lot of flannel. We're just friends. He's nervous about commitment. He's nervous in the elevator when he touches the small of my back. He's nervous on the roof. I'm nervous taking his hand because people can see us. His roommate walks in on us, then gives us shots of gin we all sip in silence. After that, we smoke on his fire escape and make out. We smoke in front of the bar and make out. We make out on an empty subway train, and my back slips around on the hard plastic seat. He pays for my brunch. He texts me all the time, even at the airport. He's breaking up with his girlfriend. He and his friends are drunk in someone's apartment in Queens. What am I up to? He hates his job, but he's totally a genius. He lost his phone, so he has a new number. He hates his job, and what he really wants to do is make art and be happy. Whoops, that's my dog. He used to live abroad for a while. He used to be really dumb. He swats his hair from his forehead and says, of course he will call. I always ask, but I'm going to stop asking. I'm nervous. He doesn't understand. He didn't grow up with many Black people. He knows he's part of the problem. He just believes in love and knowledge. I'm really sorry. Give me 1 second. I'm really sorry. He just believes in love and knowledge. Matt. Each one more beautiful than the last. Each one with more intricate ennui. I could never love him. He floats. I can't stop loving him. Matt knows the bartender. Matt studied comparative literature. He still loves his ex. I just know it. He says, I like talking to you. He says, watch your head, as I ride him in his dorm room bunk bed. He's so sorry he didn't call. It's just that things have been busy and weird. Matt and I sneak out of a movie to hook up in his car. He is afraid of me. Matt and I are hanging out this week, I think, to watch movies or something. I guess maybe. He's never met anyone like me. Things are just super casual with us. Neither of us is looking for a relationship. Matt loves relationships. He slept with my friend. I can't tell if he's into me because I'm Black or because I'm not that Black. And either way, I feel bad. I feel it in my stomach's basement. Matt can't want me. I'm not forever. Matt has kissed me hundreds of times, and he kissed my ancestors too. He held them down and kissed them real good. He was young and he could afford it. When he touched them, they always smiled, almost as if it had been rehearsed. Thanks for dealing with me continually. This poem is called What I Am. It's after a poem of the same name by Terrence Hayes. I drink the glamour even when it makes me sick. 11 or 2, it don't matter. I'm not lost, waiting to be famous. I'm waiting in line at Walgreens for my pills and texting a white man I hope will fuck me. He smells like rolling papers and the ocean in Santa Barbara. I consider buying chips and ebony and dog earring every page that says hallelujah. I keep saying I'm Black so I don't forget. I twist my hair in my fingers and watch time go silk. I drink the glamour and offer myself. If I could, I would fuck them all. They don't know what I am. I play my tarot only at night. My eyes fall, I get mean, I fall in love, I deny this. The supremacy makes me ache. The supremacy calls me baby. The people in commercials, we are slowly becoming them, biting our lips because the taste of meat. Nothing is sexier than how hungry I am. I say thick means hallelujah. Size 2 or 6, it don't matter. The pills are a cartoon animal, a quiet sister. And I'm the type of girl says, same shit, different day. I call to medicine in my sleep. I don't crash into rocks. And everywhere I see myself, and I am a nigger girl you love. Is it wrong that I feel nothing? Is it wrong that I feel nothing? I'm gonna skip the next poem. This is the first poem from There Are More Beautiful Things Than Beyonce. And I think I mentioned in class today, folks that I send my poems to when I'm drafting them. And this is a good example. I had begun this poem and more importantly, I had titled it and it was an all caps title. And I emailed my pal, Danez Smith, and just said, is this a poem? Can I do this? And they were like, yep, keep going. And sometimes that is truly all it takes. So shout out to Danez Smith. If you aren't familiar with their work, get thee to Bookshop Santa Cruz website. All they want is my money, my pussy, my blood. I am free with the following conditions. Give it up. Gimme, gimme. Okay, so I'm Black in America, right? And I walk into a bar. I drink a lot of wine and kiss a Black man on his beard. I do whatever I want because I could die any minute. I don't mean YOLO. I mean, they are hunting me. I know my pussy is real good because they said so. I say to my friend, I am broke as a joke. I am starving like Marvin Gaye. I'm so hungry I could get it on. There's far too many of me dying. The present is not so different. Everybody looks like everybody I worked with. Everybody looks like everybody I've kissed. Men champion men and animals. Everybody thinks I'm gonna die. At the museum, I tell the school group about Black art. I tell them the word contemporary. I have a nose ring I forget about. I have a brother and he is also Black. I am a little modern to a fault. I say, this painting is contemporary, like you and me. They ask me about slavery. They say Martin Luther King. At school, they learned that Black people happened. The present is not so different. I'm looking into their Black faces. They do not understand. They exist. I'm Black in America and I walk into a bar, drink a lot of wine, kiss a white man on his beard. There is no indictment. I could die any minute of depression. I just want to have sex most of the time. I just want my student loans to disappear. I just want to understand my savings account, what is happening to my $5 1 cent. I am free with the following conditions. What is happening to my brother? What if I do something wrong? My blood is so hot and wet right now. I know they want it. I do everything right just in case. I don't want to give away my money, but here I am. It's so stupid I have to say, here I am. They like to be on top. I am being set up. I am a tree, and some fruits are good and some are bad. I think I'm just going to read 2 more poems, and I think that will not put me too much over time, if at all. Okay, sorry. This is Shirley also. Okay, this poem's in sections, so just hang in there with me. The history of Black people. The saddest triptych is our blood, trouble passed down, a root out on our wet, stiff suits. Everyone walks behind us. I would rather dance hoodwinked with the devil than be alone. I pick bad juju over yellow meadow and your moon. Florida, Kentucky hemlocks glow and sepia glint. Red clay everywhere. This isn't a dream. In the beginning, red clay. 2. The history of Black people after Jean-Michel Basquiat. The history of Black people, an allegory for Denzel Washington's continuous battle with various forms of transportation. The history of Black people, a Black feminist reading of Cinderella starring Whitney Houston and Brandy. The history of Black people, or that feeling when Lauryn Hill is in your school choir, but drops out right before the statewide competition. The history of Black people, a new series coming to BET 20 years ago. The history of Black people, an investigation. The history of Black people, a tragicomic horror film. The history of Black people, or Joy, stinging pink lips. The history of Black people, says me. The history of Black people goes blank. The history of Black people, adapted from white people. 3. Single Black female cries into a glass of rosé on a Friday in April at 10:54 p.m. Is once again an unpleasant movie date, makes every little thing political, needlessly references Paula Abdul's stint as a Laker girl, wakes up fevering in the dark, afraid of trust, forever sucking on a technical bad mood, imagines her bones damned, false teeth in the grass below her feet, is a patient culprit, names her heart a dumb tick. Forgive us our dissonance. We hold shame close. A Black boy's hairline finally puts us to sleep. A sea creature shucks sand for gems. 4. If you cut open my heart, it would be midnight at the greatest party of all time. A miniature Sean Carter and Audre Lorde feasting on difference. Uppity Negroes and highfalutins and Tyrones, Rick James appearing before Judge Joe Brown, granddaddies eating fruit over the sink, Bernie Mac purring, America, let's talk. I never went to recess because I don't play. I never learned to swim, but I went swimming. I make my enemy disease in my blood. I never believed in love. I carry us all in me, drag my hooves in tall grass and breathe when I'm full, bask in a real feel-good fugitive moment. Even the sun yawns when I pray. 5. On the first page of every library book, there's a question mark for us, backs bent out of exclamation. We don't know any of your words, but our children have licked them up in pools of sweat. Have you ever felt like a square peg in a round hole? Do you sometimes dream of a handful of Skittles sprawling on February lawn? If our legend was allowed, it would sing alligator scales. It would be written in red clay. It was an open and shut case. It never lived to be 18. This is our first and last love song. I recently had the opportunity to write a poem for an anthology commemorating all the hundreds of years of Black people, slaves and former slaves living in the United States, beginning in 1619, when the first African slave was brought here. And each poet was given a particular time period, and mine was a real long time ago, before the American Revolution even. And what felt interesting to me as I was writing this, over the summer actually, and thinking about where America is now, I don't think that I don't think that many Americans even remember that there was a time without America, where there were other countries and there wasn't this one, and the world still existed. So yeah, I don't know. I spent a lot of time kind of thinking about that and lamenting it. So this will be my last poem, and then Gary and I will get a chance to talk. This poem is called Before Revolution. And I should note, I have not read it in public yet. So thanks for just like putting up with whatever happens right now. Before revolution, just crops, just nooses, wild nerve, Soon as a hurricane gets a name, it has breath, new lungs. No use in looking back, only cost. And so man spat on the land, made her take his name. Kingdom, destiny, no other gods. Before Jack Johnson, before Malcolm, before Nat Turner, before Bill Cosby, before Cornel West, before Sly, before Garvey, before Stokely. And man say, let freedom be a woman. Had to have her, so they took her. Just like a man to name war, lust. Before Colin Powell, before Kanye West, before Rockefeller, before their heads were cash, we were. Before Wall Street was a public slave market on Wall Street, feet and lemons in the open. Before a flood, wickedness is just another way to be almighty. And there was full moon, and there was half moon, and there was new moon, solstice, harvest, waiting, waiting. Most of war is waiting, aftermath. The rapture was coming all right. Before freedom was something else. Before this language, before freedom of speech and freedom of press and anti-alien, inalienable right to shoot people. Before the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, before labor unions, Oakland Panthers serving breakfast, the Philadelphia move bombing, Fred Hampton's blood on soaked mattress. There was war. There was always war. People always got shot. Before African American, but not before nigger, colored, Negro, before AAVE, before Black America, before we voted, we won. Before New Orleans, we invented jazz. Before this revolution and that revolution and this revelation, before California, before Rodney King, before Trayvon Martin, before justifiable homicide, before manifest destiny, before they kept using this language. Before Barack Obama, before Emmett Till, the crack epidemic, the housing crash, opioids, ecstasy, before white flight, before Harriet Tubman, before Flojo, before Serena, before Aretha, before Shirley's Chisholm and Bassey, before June Jordan and Juneteenth, before Roberta Flack saying, "Go up, Moses." Before Philip Wheatley, before the Black Happy Birthday song, before we could call spades spades, before we wrote us down, before Roberta Flack said, "Pharaoh doesn't want you, but he needs you, my people." Before Sojourner, Ruby Bridges, before Board of Education, before railroads and Hawaiian Airlines and Alaska Airlines and the NFL. Before the wars on homelessness and poverty and terror and security and Black trans women and Black women driving cars and Black girls at pool parties and Black kids on playgrounds and corners and Black veterans, Black single mothers, Black schizophrenics, Black professors, Black athletes. Before we wasted all the water, before Flint, Michigan, Watergate, thoughts and prayers, before semi-automatics. Without you, there is no Pharaoh. Before the Arsenio Hall show, before it was televised, before Blaxploitation and Lil' Kim and Dennis Rodman, and before NYPD's surveillance footage and dash cam footage, the Lorraine Hotel, and before Tamir Rice and Oscar Grant. Before the West Coast rap, West Coast wineries, Mexican immigrants. Before Ellis Island, before Japanese internment camps, before the gold rush, cop shows, award shows, westerns, chain restaurants, Asian fusion, the temperance movement and the suffragette movement, Hillary Clinton and Eleanor Roosevelt and Sandra Bullock in The Blind Side, before Jonestown, before Selma, before we almost lost Detroit, before presidents of the United States of America, before a noose was a figure of speech, before unimaginable tragedy. No one put their hands over their hearts. Thank you all.
Morgan, I'm jumping in because nobody else can do this. So I'm just going to applaud the hell out of myself here.
I appreciate you.
Totally. Oh my God. Wow.
Oh, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So we have some questions that have come in. but before, I'm going to read some and pick a few here if we have time. But I got one of my own. You were featured in Common's outro to A Beautiful Revolution. How cool is that? Tell me about that. How
You
cool.
know, 2020, it's like no rules. I don't even know. Common DM'd me, and I was like, I kind of didn't believe that it was him, even though I had the check mark. And I was like, here's my email. Yeah, I mean, Common is the poet of all rappers, and I guess unsurprisingly, he reads poems, and he reads my poems. And
well, that can't be a surprise. That's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that you wouldn't have thought about before. So fun, such an interesting, different thing to do, to listen to this newly made album and write something that would close it out. So scary and nerve-wracking, but also so fun, and just not the sort of thing you think is going to happen when you're like getting your MFA in poetry. That you'll be just like sitting in a rap studio hanging out. But yeah, poetry opens more doors than I had ever thought. It's like a key to any door, kind of, so yeah, wild, but so fun and unreal to like see my name on Spotify.
I guess so. So let me get to some of the questions here. Carolina, loves your poetry and really enjoyed your YA novel, and she wants to know if you plan on releasing any more YA novels or any more novels in general anytime soon.
Not soon. One thing I learned is that novels take a really long time and they're kind of terrible to write. Another thing that I was not warned about was that writing a novel means you have to write like roughly 12 novels, and the drafts are a beast. When I finished, I told my agent, like, remind me never to do that again. But also, I have a new idea for a novel. And he was like, stay right there, like that is the place to be. So hopefully, yes, there will be more novels in the future. I'm not sure about young adult. I am working on trying to write the script for the film adaptation of Who Put the Song On. So that is a whole other genre that I'm learning, and I'm excited to kind of dive into that and see what is different about writing the movie than writing the novel and all of that stuff. But yeah, I have like too many book ideas to do like in one lifetime probably. So like we'll see. I don't know. I'm going pretty fast. So.
Yeah, I'll say you are. I mean, well, clearly, if you write it, they'll read it. It's like everybody's waiting for it. Well, this is interesting. I had a question. I just in an interview, you wrote that everything is stories. And it seems clear to me that telling stories is how we learn from one another, and more importantly, how we can conquer the lies, the misconceptions we carry about each other. Could you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think that narrative is really so important to understanding cause and effect, and progression, and basically a really interesting way to think about the impact of your actions on others and the impact of your speech on others, and the kind of ever moving cycle through the history of the world. And I think often we kind of jump in media res, as it were, and don't consider the whole story. And I think that really is so key to understanding where we are right now, is looking back and being able to project that forward. But yeah, I think that the way that stories are told impact us even more than we realize. And that's something that I really try to point out in my work and investigate for myself in my work, as like, what narratives have I internalized about myself, about others? What are the sources of these beliefs? You know, why in Law and Order does one victim appear more like have more sympathy than another? You know, like, what makes a person suspicious? Yeah, all of those things are something that I'm keeping my eyes open to and trying to pay attention to and undo in my own mind and then in my writing.
We have a wonderful question here. Your poetry feels like a conversation. Do you feel that it's most important to write to communicate with others, or to write to converse with yourself? And who, if anyone, do you write for? We talked a little bit about this in class today.
Yeah, I mean, I write. I think everyone should read. You know what I mean? I think everyone should read my work. It's there for everyone. I write on my own behalf, you know, to speak for myself primarily. And often I'm, you know, with Magical Negro, I was speaking to and on behalf of Black people stretching through time. In There Are More Beautiful Things Than Beyonce, I was speaking very particularly on behalf of Black women. But generally, it does begin with a conversation with myself. I mean, I live alone. I have a really active and aggressive brain and like lots of voices up there that are talking to me and yelling at me and all of that. So obviously it begins there, right? And usually for me, it begins with a question that I'm asking myself. And that in turn becomes a conversation, not only with the reader and other folks, but with media and with, you know, say a painting or a television show. There is always a kind of communicative act. And certainly that is what drew me to writing in the first place, is the opportunity to communicate in a way that I can't verbally.
You mentioned today that you spent a lot of time alone, and you mentioned it during your reading. I'm just curious how the pandemic has affected you. Did you notice any difference? No, I'm already spending a lot of time alone.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, I'm fine. Or did you do you feel more claustrophobic? And because I know that you travel a lot, you give a lot of readings. And one presumes that that's one way of getting out of that,
Yeah.
that interior space. How has that affected you, and how has that affected your writing?
It's tough. So much of my process is talking things over and also just experiencing the world, you know, eavesdropping on people, you know, like just overhearing and in bars and going to different cities and yeah, just observing other folks and humanity. So it is harder because I find myself going more interior, and I do not believe that that's something I needed more of. So it's kind of, you know, I have to temper myself. I think I'm such a Sagittarius in that I need to be able to leave at any moment and like go somewhere else and change my whole environment. So that has been really hard because even though I like alone time and I prefer it, I always need to have the option. So just finding different ways to experience travel, you know, whether it be shifts in activities or yeah, just sitting on the patio, you know, things like that. And I do find myself just taking a lot more breaks in general and in my writing. Yeah.
You have a dog, so I know you take walks.
I take walks with the dog. I talk to her a lot.
So I'm just curious, have you you know, worked that into your practice? I mean, do you carry your notebook with you and make notes when you're walking and just to get out of literally the headspace, but also just
Totally. Yeah.
Quarantine
It's
space.
totally. It's often the time when, if I'm writing and I feel, I've been staring at the screen and arranging the words that way, I go on the walk and I turn sentences over in my head, and just to get away from that internet thing and, just kind of let the words kind of float around in my mind as I'm out in the world. And that's helpful to just, change the way that I'm thinking and the way that I'm approaching the process of making a sentence.
We have a question here that has an incredible segue in it. I'm going to give you both sections. I want, what poets, musicians, and artists are you inspired by? And do you feel that the white American educational system has failed you and other Black students?
Oh my God.
Connected, but maybe. What musicians, maybe we should start with the first, and artists are you inspired by? I know that you're very inspired by visual artists and painters.
Yeah, so I mean, some of the ones that are included in this book in particular are Adrian Piper. Let's see who else. I know that Micheline Thomas is in quite a few of my poems. Carrie Mae Weems. These are folks that come up a lot for me. And Lorna Simpson is an artist who's I have like art books that I look at often when I'm writing or trying to become inspired. In terms of writers, Ishmael Reed, June Jordan, Lucille Clifton, Langston Hughes, Nikki G, all over there. Also like Ginsberg and Lester Bangs, the music critic. Pretty wide variety there. Zora Neale Hurston is a hero of mine as an anthropologist writer. I'm so interested in that combination of things. What else? Musicians, man, Pharoah Sanders and where are I? Oh man, I don't even know like what genre to begin with. Nancy Wilson and TV on the radio and Fugazi and also Curtis Mayfield. I don't even know.
That works for me.
All over. This is a little sampling. As for the other question, 100% yes. I think the white educational system has failed all of us. We know all the wrong stuff. I mean, I have a skewed perspective because I did not go to public school. I went to a very conservative and religious high school. So we didn't learn like evolution. We didn't learn like half of American history. So I knew that even as a child, as a teenager, when folks were coming up to me after class and being like, I might be a Democrat. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because we weren't even presented that as an option, But in general, and one of the things that I was trying to unpack in Magical Negro is with the Frederick Douglass's Cousins poem and others, is just this idea of romanticizing and containing within a box these historical figures who were in fact people and who walked among us. It's one thing to think of Harriet Tubman as a saint. It's another thing to think of her as a woman who escaped slavery and then made the choice to go back several times. You know what I mean? Like that is saintly, but a real life human did that. And she also, like, who did Harriet Tubman kiss? We don't know. And I think like we need to think it's very related to There Are More Beautiful Things Than Beyonce, actually, because there's a level of stripping away the surface and trying to understand the whole picture and being told the whole story. And that's a big theme in my young adult novel. It's just like everything I've been told is a lie, and that kind of like teen angst it's so real, and it doesn't go away often. And it was fun to write from a teen perspective, like, holy shit, the Panthers were cool. They weren't terrorists, you know, like these little things, they stay with you. And I think we should continue to interrogate them.
Yes, yes. Everything you know is wrong. It's
Yeah. It's everything is up for questioning,
Yeah.
you know, and I think to kind of parody myself, and now more than ever, it is important to rethink what we are being told.
yeah. Don't believe everything you think. Yes.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Well, we have an interesting question. Someone wants to know, how do you decide how to end a poem? That you're, you know, they say that all your poems sing at the end.
I love a last line. I really do. I place a lot of importance on it, and I don't know what that is. I mean, the drama factor, I guess. The mic drop. I love just like that sense of, holy shit, that was okay. Now we're done. And often that happens in the writing, where I'll get to a line and I'm like, well, can't put anything after that, you know. And the poem writing becomes a sort of ramping up to that final moment. So yeah, usually it is just like, well, I've said everything I need to say. Often it is looking outward, and kind of posing something to the reader. One question I always ask of my poems, and my students like get annoyed of me asking this question, but I think a lot about, you know, how do I want readers to feel at the beginning of the poem, and how do I want them to feel at the end? So I'm very conscious of that in terms of crafting a poem and kind of building toward the last line. So it does become a kind of journey of how do we move from this feeling to that one.
We talked a little bit in class today about how you can squirrel away a nice, good last line. It's like, not just have to write a poem so I can sneak that.
Yes, eventually it will come in handy.
You've been asked, have you ever had to combat publishers who've tried to censor your work? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Not censor so much as try to ask for a lot more explanation from me, or things of that nature. A lot of, I mean, I always joke about Tin House, whom I love, but it's a lot of white people that are working over there. And my copy edits, it's funny how often there's a little note that's like, no, that's a black thing. Like, don't worry about that. And they're good about that, you know? So there is a little bit of that. And I will say it's different. It was different with the poems than with the YA, but I was very lucky to have a Black woman as one of my editors on that project. Yeah, I think part of being a poet is not having to deal with that. And I will say poet in America, with our free speech being, you know, as it is for poets. And in a lot of places, it isn't safe to write a poem that is telling the truth. But I would say here that it's definitely easier to get by with a poem that challenges than, say, an essay or something of the sort. So I do think that I'm lucky as a poet to sneak a lot of things in that otherwise people would be afraid of, you know, or disturbed by. Yeah, that's part of the magic of poems and part of why I use them. But yeah, other than, I don't know. I mean, I've been kind of suggested to move in different ways, etc. But I mean, why am I doing this then? If I'm gonna, you know, I might as well get a better capitalism job if I'm gonna be censored, you know what I mean? So my philosophy is always kind of like, fuck them. But that isn't always the easy thing to do. And I've had to, you know, make sacrifices in order to do that.
So there's several questions about your writing process. people want to know, how long does it take you to write a poem? How do you figure out which parts of your thoughts are worth writing about? And that really gets back into the censoring part.
Yeah.
It's like, so you're not being censored horribly by your editors, but there is that self-censoring that goes on.
Absolutely.
So could you talk about that just a little bit?
I opt to write everything. That is usually what I try to do. Of course, there is like self-editing that happens, even from like this to fingertips to typewriter, you know, but I really try to just put all of it on the page and then work backwards from there. You can always cut, you know, I always prefer to have something that's longer and messier that I can whittle down and perfect. It varies in terms of how long poems take. Some poems, oh man, I worked on for, you know, over a year. Others kind of came out, they kind of arrived almost fully formed. And in those cases, I'm pretty sure that the poems have been there, like building, you know, and yeah, I can think of a couple poems that came like that, where I'm like, that was living with me for a while. My process, I write everything down. I have like several notebooks, and there's like, even like, look, there's just like a little piece of paper all over my house. So I write just like every thought down, and then sometimes I'm like, this is crazy and nothing, you know, but why not write it down? And you don't know where it's going to come in handy, or what it could be shorthand for, what it could spark. So usually when I go to actually craft a poem, I have already filled some pages of a notebook with some thoughts and kind of looked back and seen, oh wait, I'm kind of utilizing these words over and over, or it seems like I'm kind of returning to this idea. This thing is showing up over the past couple weeks, and so I'm already starting with some kind of material, and then it becomes almost a process of collaging.
I think we're starting to run down the clock here. There's a lot of questions.
Oh no.
One very practical, and one you could start answering and we could talk until about 4 a.m. and you wouldn't get to the end. So let's do the first one.
Okay.
Which is easy, the easy one first. How do you feel about MFAs? And what was your experience like attending NYU's MFA program?
It was good. It was mixed. It was mixed, but I had an overall positive experience. One thing that I went into it thinking about was what I wanted to gain. You know, I mean, you can't hope for everything in an MFA experience. It's not like you're paying and you will guaranteed become a better writer with a book contract, you know? So you kind of have to set your own expectations. And mine were to get close to a draft of my first book, and also to find just 1 or 2 readers that would always be good readers of my work, and be folks I could depend on. And, you know, I just like, that was bare minimum. And then, and so that allowed me to kind of take the pressure off of the whole program, and just focus on writing and relationships. And that has been great for me. I did write my first book while I was in the program, so I 100% cannot complain. Let's see what else, like Megan O'Rourke, who was a teacher of mine, blurbed my last book. Matt Rohr texted me a couple weeks ago, you know, is like an ongoing friend. So yeah, I liked it. I do not think that they are you know, necessary for me. I didn't believe that I would complete a book without a program like that around me at the time. And I went straight after college. It also was a terrible time to find jobs. It was 2010. So I was like, might as well just keep going to school. But yeah, I don't think they're necessary. And I think that the community that comes from an MFA can be built outside of an MFA. But what a wild time, you know. I think often, wow, my only responsibility on certain days was just like read poems, write poems, talk about poems with other people. Like that feels insane to me. And so, yeah, just an opportunity to really delve into that, I think that's the equivalent of an MFA. However you can make that happen is important.
Okay, so here's the easy one. Where's America going next?
Oh my God, why is this not the first time I've gotten this question? And as last time I was like, you guys, I don't know. Like, I know that it's
wise. You know too much. Now it's like,
yeah, exactly. I'm
where
like,
are we
you
going?
guys gotta, I mean, somewhere, right? Like somewhere. We gotta go somewhere different. But you know, I am just an artist. And all I can do is say how it is and how it bees and how it has been. Because I think that will point us in the direction of where we're going. I mean, one need only to look at 1968 to understand like what global resistance and turmoil looks like, and what are some of the things that people have said before when we've been in these very similar positions. So yeah, I mean, as is the case often with this great country of mine, I think it gets worse before it gets better. But I really, you know, as for me and what I can offer is hope for listening, a little bit more listening. And I think that you know, we're inching toward that, or at least, you know, turning down the volume on some of the you know, dials that are out there so we can hear others. Yeah, I worry. I really am terribly worried for us all. But the fact that you're asking this is encouraging, because I think that we all know that we have to go somewhere else. And I think it's worth I think, you know what, I think it's a better way to answer this would be to pose a different question, which is, where could America go? You know, I think it is always ever prescient to be asking that. So much about living in this country can feel, even though it's democratic, can feel inevitable, you know, and feel, it can feel like our choices are being made for us. But it is important to continue to ask, like, where could we go, rather than what does it look like might happen? Because one answer will excite you and the other will just be a bummer. So, you know, I think it is, especially as artists, important for us to keep asking, where could we go? I'll leave it to fake and or kind of real news to, you know what I mean, like tell us where we're going. But it's my job as artists, and it's all of our job as an artistic community, to imagine what the possibilities may be.
To dwell in possibility, which is what our job is.
Yep.
Morgan,
Thank you.
what a delight. This has been so wonderful. Thank you for your generosity in class today. Thank you for a wonderful reading. It's just been wonderful.
I so appreciate it. And thanks everyone for being here. There's so many folks who came to the reading. I really appreciate that. And I'm sorry that I can't like chat with you in the signing line. And
I know I want to hug, but we'll save that.
I know, lots of hugs that are, you know, whenever I can, I'll get up there. And
announcements. There is a curated collection of Morgan Parker's work that at Bookshop Santa Cruz, and that link is in the chat. So please do that. I'd like to remind you all that this has been a free event. So hey, buy a book, you know, buy two, buy three, what the hell. I want you to look for Maggie Paul's marvelous journal, interview with Morgan in the forthcoming issue of Catamaran Literary Journal. It's just incredible. And lastly, I do hope you'll consider making a contribution to the Humanities Institute to help fund this series far into the future and join and support Poetry Santa Cruz. Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming. And I look forward to seeing you all again next year.